Hello, today we are going to recap the movie 12 Strong. This story follows a U.S. Army Special Forces team led by Captain Mitch Nelson, who were sent to Afghanistan immediately after the September 11th attacks. The enemy they face has around 500 fighters and heavy weapons, while Nelson's team consists of only 12 soldiers. Despite being heavily outnumbered, they are assigned a highly dangerous mission that seems almost impossible to accomplish. The story begins in New York City, where a calm morning suddenly turns into chaos filled with screams and explosions. Terrorists hijack 4 passenger planes and crash them into major American landmarks. Within moments, the World Trade Center is reduced to smoke and burning debris. Thousands of lives are lost, and the entire nation is gripped by fear and anger. Investigations reveal that the attack was orchestrated by Al-Qaeda, led by a dangerous militant named Mullah Razan, who was hiding somewhere in the mountains of Afghanistan. At the same time, we see Captain Nelson living peacefully with his family after recently taking leave from the army. His calm life is shattered when he watches the devastating news on television. Anger and determination fill his eyes, and without hesitation, he cuts short his leave and heads straight to Army headquarters. The atmosphere there is tense, with preparations for retaliation underway. Nelson insists on being part of the mission, but his superior, Byers, initially refuses due to Nelson's lack of combat experience. Frustrated, Nelson leaves, but his friend Spencer also pushes strongly to join the mission. After some deliberation, Byers finally agrees and assigns Nelson to lead the mission, giving him a strict deadline. Once committed, there is no turning back. That night, Nelson returns home and informs his wife about the mission and its risks. Though she is clearly afraid, he reassures her with a promise that he will return safely. The next morning, Nelson and his team receive a briefing from a colonel, who explains that Mullah Razan has captured the city of Mazar-i-Sharif. However, a local commander named Dostum is resisting and trying to reclaim the city. The team's objective is to partner with Dostum and his forces to defeat the enemy. Soon after, Nelson and his team board a helicopter and fly into Afghanistan under the cover of darkness. They are dropped into a remote mountainous region, surrounded by silence and constant danger. Once the helicopter leaves, they are completely on their own. They remain hidden for several hours until they spot 2 armed men approaching. The team quickly captures them, but soon they are surrounded by dozens of fighters. Tension rises as weapons are readied, but it is revealed that these men belong to Dostum. The colonel had already arranged contact with him. Nelson and his team then begin a difficult journey through the mountains with the local fighters. After hours of travel, they reach the meeting point, but Dostum is not there. Suddenly, gunfire echoes, and a group of horsemen arrives. Dostum appears as a commanding figure, observing Nelson and his men with caution and distrust. Without much interaction, he walks away to eat, showing little interest. Realizing trust must be earned, Nelson offers him a bottle of alcohol. After a moment of silence, Dostum slightly smiles, marking the beginning of mutual trust. Dostum provides them with 6 horses for the journey, as vehicles are useless in such terrain. However, this is also a test of their capability. Due to the limited number of horses, Nelson makes a tough decision to leave 5 of his men behind and move forward with the rest. Meanwhile, the story also shows Mullah Razan, a ruthless leader who values no human life and has spread terror across Mazar-i-Sharif after capturing it. Mullah Razan rules through fear, keeping the entire region under his control. He kills people without reason just to maintain terror in everyone's hearts. At one point, he holds a family hostage simply because the head of the household was secretly educating his daughters. Razan does not want anyone in his territory to be educated, as it goes against his beliefs. In front of everyone, he brutally shoots a woman from that family, an act so cruel it shakes humanity itself. As evening falls, Dostum takes Nelson and his team to their second base, Caves, and decides to launch an attack in the morning. The night slowly sinks into darkness, and everyone spends it inside those caves, each person thinking about the battle ahead. At sunrise, Dostum takes Nelson to confront a small Taliban unit. However, the situation is shocking. Dostum's forces are on horseback, while the enemy is equipped with trucks mounted with automatic machine guns and tanks. The battle seems nearly impossible. Understanding the situation, Nelson quickly contacts headquarters and requests air support. Soon, bombs begin to fall from the sky, targeting the Taliban fighters. Nelson then makes a dangerous decision to move closer to the enemy in order to provide precise coordinates for the airstrikes. As he advances, the Taliban suddenly attack him. Bullets rain from all sides, and rocket launchers explode around him, trapping him in a deadly situation. Dostum watches from a distance but does not intervene, as he still does not fully trust Nelson and suspects it could be a trap. Despite the danger, Nelson risks his life again to give accurate coordinates. This time, every bomb hits its target, completely destroying the Taliban unit. Amid dust and smoke, Nelson stands firm while Dostum watches from afar, a faint smile forming on his face, perhaps the beginning of trust. After the mission, Nelson and his team return to the caves. The silence is the same, but the atmosphere has changed. Nelson's face shows both exhaustion and doubt. Can Dostum really be trusted? The next morning, Dostum is ready again and takes Nelson toward another Taliban position. Once again, Nelson calls for air support, and bombs strike, eliminating many enemies. As the dust settles, it appears the battle is over. Believing the fight has ended, Dostum makes a critical mistake. He moves forward with his men to inspect the area, but the enemy is still alive. Suddenly, they launch a surprise attack from all sides. Machine guns fire rapidly, and tanks begin blasting. Dostum and his men are caught off guard, and one by one, his soldiers start falling. The situation becomes extremely critical, almost leading to defeat. Seeing this from a distance, Nelson immediately rushes into the battlefield with his team without hesitation. This fight is no longer just about the mission, it has become a fight for trust. However, the enemy's numbers are overwhelming, and eventually, they are forced to retreat. Somehow, they manage to escape with their lives. Dostum loses many men in this battle, and several are severely injured. But Nelson's courage in risking his life changes everything. In Dostum's eyes, Nelson is no longer just a soldier but a true ally. Gradually, trust between them grows stronger. Dostum then shares a new plan with Nelson, one that could completely destroy the enemy's power. The next morning, Nelson explains the mission plan to his entire team. He also contacts the second group he had left behind earlier, ordering them to regroup. Soon, Spencer and his men arrive on horseback, and the team is fully reunited, ready to attack once again. This time, however, the enemy is more alert. Learning from their past mistakes, they hide behind hills and walls instead of staying in open ground. Everything seems quiet at first, almost normal. The team carefully moves downward while Spencer keeps watch from a distance. Danger can be felt in every step. As they reach the lower area and begin inspecting the surroundings, sudden movement is noticed. A gun barrel slowly emerges from behind a wall. But by then, it is already too late. The enemy had been lying in ambush, waiting for the perfect moment. Slowly, they bring their truck-mounted machine gun closer to the wall, preparing to strike as Nelson. As Nelson and his team move closer, a sudden and intense attack begins. Bullets rain from all directions, and explosions echo across the battlefield. Within seconds, many of Dostum's men fall to the ground. Fear starts to take over again, and some fighters begin to retreat. But then, Dostum picks up a pistol and charges alone toward the enemy, a true leader who never backs down. Seeing him move forward, all his men, and Nelson as well, follow him into the fight. Now the battle is being fought with full force. In the middle of the chaos, Dostum reaches a fallen enemy soldier and picks up his RPG rocket launcher. After a brief moment of silence, he fires it directly at the enemy. A massive explosion follows, turning the enemy position into fire and smoke. After hours of fierce fighting, they gradually eliminate all the enemies and finally capture the area. After this victory, relief and satisfaction are clearly visible on Dostum's face. In the dust and blood-filled battlefield, they finally achieve a major win. In the quiet of the day, Dostum stands beside Nelson and, for the first time, opens up about his past. He looks at Nelson and explains in a low voice why he wants to kill Mullah Razan. Pain is clearly visible in his eyes. He reveals that before capturing Mazar-i-Sharif, Razan brutally killed his entire family because they were the most powerful and wealthy in the city. Once his family was gone, the entire city fell under Razan's fear and people became like slaves. But Dostum somehow survived, and from that day on, he swore that either Razan would die or he would. Since then, he has been fighting to free his people. Days pass as Nelson and his team continue working with Dostum to locate Taliban positions and destroy them using airstrikes. However, every victory comes at a cost. Many of Dostum's men have been killed, and many others are injured. His strength is slowly decreasing. Despite this, Nelson is determined to finish the mission. Almost all enemy positions have been destroyed, only one final stronghold remains. Nelson wants to attack immediately, but Dostum refuses, knowing that a direct attack in their current condition would be suicidal. Being a wise leader, he chooses to wait for the right moment and retreats with his remaining men. Now Nelson and his team are left alone. The atmosphere becomes tense and heavy. Nelson looks at his men and tells them that they are very close to their goal. If they retreat now, such attacks will continue to reach their homes. His words ignite a fire in every soldier's heart, and one by one, They stand with him. The decision is made, they will fight this final battle without Dostum's support. They wait through the night, and at dawn, they move toward the enemy's final stronghold. Nelson divides his team into 4 groups, positioning them around the valley. As they look down, everyone is stunned. Inside the valley stands a massive enemy force of nearly 20,000 fighters, along with tanks, vehicles, and heavy weapons spread everywhere. This time, even a small mistake could end the entire mission. Spencer contacts air support and sends precise coordinates. Bombs begin to fall from the sky, each hitting its target accurately. Within moments, more than half of the enemy force is destroyed along with their tanks and vehicles. But the battle is not over yet. Many enemies are still alive. As Spencer prepares to send new targets, he notices something unusual. Around 40 to 50 enemies approach slowly with their hands raised, as if they want to surrender. Spencer signals them to stop, but they keep advancing. Tension rises, and suddenly one of them shouts Allahu Akbar and detonates the bomb strapped to his body. A massive explosion engulfs the area in smoke. Spencer is caught in the blast and is severely injured, though still alive. At that moment, Nelson looks into the distance and sees Dostum returning to the battlefield with his men. But then comes the most dangerous turn of the battle. Mullah Razin spots Dostum and orders an attack using a deadly BM-21 rocket launcher. Dozens of rockets tear through the sky and strike different parts of the mountains. With every explosion, the ground shakes, and many of Dostum's men are killed. Nelson realizes that if the rocket system fires again, no one will survive. Without hesitation, he leaves his position and decides to move directly toward that weapon. The enemy begins to surround them from all sides. Bullets, explosions, and death spread everywhere. The team calls for air support again, and bombs are dropped, but this time, they land dangerously close, injuring several soldiers. Meanwhile, Nelson mounts a horse and charges straight toward the enemy lines, with Dostum's brave fighters following him. They push forward through the valley, fighting through every danger. Suddenly, a powerful explosion knocks Nelson off his horse. For a moment, everything goes dark, but he is not one to give up. He gets back up and quickly eliminates 2 enemies in front of him. Soon, Dostum and his men reach him. On the other side, Razin's forces are trying to reload the BM-21 rocket system, but they are too late. Before they can finish, Nelson reaches the weapon and takes control of it. The entire situation turns in their favor. Meanwhile, Mullah Razin tries to escape in a vehicle to save his life, but Dostum refuses to let him go. A high-speed chase begins through dust and gunfire. Suddenly, a loud crash occurs. Razin's vehicle gets stuck in a ditch and comes to a halt. Now, he has nowhere left to run. There is no way left for Razin to escape. Dostum slowly gets down from his horse, his eyes filled with the fire of revenge. He stands in front of Razin and, without saying a word, shoots him, finally avenging the death of his family. Within moments, the battlefield falls silent, the dust settles, and the war comes to an end. Soon after, a medical helicopter arrives at the scene. The injured Spencer is immediately evacuated for treatment. The rest of the soldiers stay behind because one final task remains: to liberate Mazar-i-Sharif. When they enter the city, an incredible sight awaits them. The people of the city welcome them by showering flowers. Every face reflects happiness, freedom, and relief. As Razin's forces have fled, Dostum approaches Nelson, and this time his eyes show deep respect. He tells Nelson that today he has not only changed his life but the lives of the entire city. He then says that even if their countries become enemies in the future, Nelson will always remain his brother. These words become the greatest victory of the entire war. After this, Dostum returns to his city. Nelson quietly buries a small piece of metal in the soil of Afghanistan, in memory of the 3,000 innocent people who lost their lives in the attacks. For him, this was not just a mission, it was justice. Finally, all the soldiers return to their country by helicopter, where their courage is honored by everyone. Nelson reunites with his wife at home, where she is preparing for Christmas. Their eyes meet, and without a single word, everything is understood. This is where the story comes to an end.